Chair, I support House Resolution 1243, which requests President Biden produce information to the House regarding his family's international business arrangements. Now, behind me is an email from 2016 during the Obama-Biden administration between Hunter Biden and Miguel Alemán, the son of a Mexican billionaire and grandson of the former Mexican president. The email begins, quote, "We are arriving late tonight on Air Force 2 to Mexico City. We will be there for Thursday. I'm attending a meeting with President Nieto with Dad." The highlighted sections here are significant. Quote, "We have been talking about business deals and partnerships for 7 years. I've brought every single person you've ever asked me to bring to the effing White House and the Vice President's house and the inauguration. I've delivered on every single thing you've ever asked." In this email, Hunter Biden acknowledges his attendance at a meeting between Mexican President Nieto and then Vice President Biden. He discusses business deals and partnerships with a wealthy and politically connected Mexican family, and references access provided to Mexican businessmen at the White House and the Vice President's residence, and states he had already delivered on every single thing you've ever asked. And we also have a picture of Vice President Biden, Hunter Biden, Miguel Alemán, his father, and Carlos Slim, one of the richest men in the world, in 2015 while Joe Biden was president. And this is what we're asked to believe, that then Vice President and current President Joe Biden has no idea what's going on in Hunter's businesses and whether Hunter might be compromised by America's adversaries across the world. Just a few months ago, I showed these images to Matthew Olson, who's the current Assistant AG for the Department of Justice's National Security Division. His division is responsible for administering FARA, which requires individuals representing foreign principals to register with DOJ, and I asked him about this. He refused to answer whether these images raised any concerns that Hunter Biden may have violated FARA. He also refused to comment on concerns raised by FBI whistleblowers who reported that the FBI had committed a widespread effort within the FBI to downplay or discredit negative information about Hunter Biden. Well, for years, members of Congress have also sought access to suspicious activity reports filed by banks to Department of Treasury. And when it was revealed the Biden family had generated at least 150 of these reports, the policy of allowing congressional access to them was suddenly changed by this administration. Problems gotten so bad that House Financial Services Committee Chairwoman Maxine Waters authored legislation to reverse the Biden administration's policy change, and that passed the House earlier this year. President Biden told the American people that he never discussed his family's business abroad with them. Now, that was a lie. President Biden not only discussed his family's international business, he participated in it. His emails show it was a lie. We were told in 2020 that when Hunter Biden's laptop, which contains, as now been revealed, a massive treasure trove of evidence of Hunter Biden's international business deals, and also recently reported, as recently within the last 10 days, that a second laptop has been found. We were told that that was Russian disinformation by the same people who are sitting across the dais from us today, telling us that we should not even probe this. We should not even look for this. We should not even ask for this. The reality is, this was not Russian disinformation. Even the Washington Post and even the New York Times, nearly a year after that laptop being discovered, have admitted it and acknowledged the veracity of the information on those laptops. That gives us further impetus to go forward here, because as the ranking member has repeatedly said, we need to know what's going on, because a SARS report is something very serious, and it indicates potential compromising of the highest office in the land. The reversal of longstanding Treasury Department policy raises serious questions about the motives behind the change, and specifically whether it's being designed to protect Hunter Biden. We should get those and go forward, which is why I'm going to vote yes. And now, Madam Chair, I can either read every one of these, but I would like to submit for the record more than 100 articles, everything from the Washington Times to the UK Mail to the New York Times and the Washington Post, about the Hunter Biden story and everything related here. I'm happy to read the title off each and every one.
So ordered, without objection.
And you don't want me to read them? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield back.
Representative Clyde, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. First, let me comment on my Democratic colleague from Georgia's statement on his assertion that the Democrats had wins for the American people. Well, let me go through a few of those wins. 40-year high inflation, wide open borders, rampant crime, and soaring energy costs. These are the Democrat wins. These are the big Democrat wins, but they're not for the American people. They're for the Democrats. But I rise to speak in support of HRES 1243. This resolution provides Congress with necessary information to review and address apparent conflicts of interest regarding President Joe Biden and members of his family. Without the ability to review documents held by the United States Treasury, such as suspicious activity reports, information which was previously routinely provided to Congress until the Biden administration, without the ability to review these documents, we cannot carry out proper congressional oversight. Hunter Biden's Chinese business deals are just one concern. In 2012, as Joe Biden and Barack Obama ran for re-election, Hunter and his longtime business partner, Devon Archer, now sentenced for fraudulent activities, reportedly entered talks with a Jonathan Lee, a Chinese national who ran Bohai Capital. The group founded private equity fund Bohai Harvest RST-BHR, and BHR is Biden, Hunter, Robert, on December the 16th, 2013, 11 days after Vice President Biden flew to Beijing to meet with President Xi Jinping. Hunter told The New Yorker he had explicitly requested to join Vice President Biden, his father, on the trip and arranged for Lee to meet his father. The New York Times reported that Hunter, Archer, and Christopher Heinz served on the board and controlled 30% of BHR. The rest of the company is owned or controlled by Chinese investors that include the Bank of China, according to records filed with Chinese regulators. In 2016, BHR, through funds that came entirely from Chinese state-backed companies, contributed over $1 billion to the buyout of Arizona-based Freeport-McMoRan for the purchase of a cobalt copper mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo, when my good friend Mr. Donalds talked about cobalt. Hunter Biden stood to gain millions on the deal. The firm also purchased a stake in China's contemporary Amperex technology company, the world's biggest maker of batteries for electric vehicles. Committee Republicans have already written to the Transportation Secretary about our concerns that due to the Biden administration's policies, American jobs are suffering. For example, Ford Motor Company recently announced that it will cut 8,000 more American jobs. As Republicans highlighted in our January letter to the National Archivist, the American people deserve answers on the extent of Hunter Biden's business dealings, both domestic and abroad, and whether, or really how much, then Vice President Joe Biden was aware of the extent to which his son was trading on President Biden's name or Vice President Biden's name. Thank you, and I yield back.
Back. We now recognize Representative Mace.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of Ranking Member Comer's resolution HR 1243 in this inquiry. Looking for corruption or pay to play or any of those things should be nonpartisan issues. And as someone who has worked with both sides of the aisle, I know that firsthand. Corruption is neither on one side or the other. It is on both, and we should willingly be investigating this. And if for no other reason, a most recent podcast that featured Mark Zuckerberg from August 25th on the Joe Rogan Experience, if for no other reason, his own admission that the FBI hid and told social media companies like Facebook, according to Mark Zuckerberg, to reduce the propensity or the availability of articles related to Hunter Biden's laptop on social media in days leading up to the 2020 election. For that reason alone, we should be opening this inquiry. It's crazy to think that we're talking about the public interest and the public good. Well, subverting publicly available information is not for the public good. It's not in the public interest. I've heard today from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle talking about what President Biden has done for America, citing out the Inflation Reduction Act, for example, where economists on both sides of the aisle have stated that the Inflation Reduction Act isn't actually going to do anything for inflation. In fact, 0.25%, it would improve inflation in about 7 years. It is a ridiculous argument to say that really Build Back Better Light is an Inflation Reduction Act. It's not. I heard earlier today from my comments across the aisle talking about Roe v. Wade. Democrats, in fact, including President Biden, had the opportunity, and they talked about overturning Roe v. Wade in the early 80s out of Joe Biden's own mouth. And looking at the comments by former Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, also talking about the flaws of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade is extreme. That is not where the rest of the country is. And in fact, under Obama's administration, the Democrats had an opportunity to codify Roe v. Wade and decided not to. So this hysteria over Roe v. Wade is completely manufactured. And you look at the rest of America, we're not putting our country first. And look at what's happened with our border. Over 4 million people have come across the border since in the last year and a half, since President Biden was sworn into office. And in fact, just last night, 2 kilograms of fentanyl was found in a police bust in the state of South Carolina. That amount of fentanyl could kill thousands of people. I heard comments from the left today about respecting those who serve, and that is important, but it's not respectful to the people of this country when we refuse to work together, even when we're investigating corruption, even when we're investigating something as just minute as, according to media reports, over 150 financial transactions that were flagged that were related to Hunter Biden and his associates. And for suspicious activity. And the last time I checked, suspicious activity means high dollar transactions that are highly unusual, that it could indicate some possible criminal activity like money laundering or tax evasion. This level of suspicious activity, when you read through the 80,000 texts and email messages in that laptop, understanding that now, as Ranking Member Comer rightly pointed out, 2 people have confirmed the big guy was Joe Biden. We saw my colleague from Arizona showed the photo and the email leading up to some of what's happening in the White House when Biden was vice president and his son's business activity. These are things that we should be laser focused on. The American people want to see us work together and to investigate some of these issues. I mean, just the shady business deals alone, are all things that we should be investigating. But we know what happened. We know that mainstream media and big tech silenced the average American's availability to that information in the days leading up to an election. They labeled these stories as disinformation. They labeled these stories as crackpot conservative conspiracy theories. They labeled these stories as Russian propaganda. And now we're only now learning that now some mainstream media is starting to write lengthy dossiers and reports on how it was all true. And now Democrats and the left are scratching their heads as to why the American people are demanding more information, because the American people have been lied to. They've been misled intentionally by big tech and by the mainstream media. So my Republican colleagues and we promise we'll get to the bottom of these answers, regardless of our colleagues, whether they decide to help us or not on the other side of the aisle. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
And I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
I think that there's a lot of things that would have happened in my life if my last name wasn't Biden. Like your investment firm striking a $1 billion deal with a Chinese-owned bank 10 days after you and Joe visit, and collecting over $80,000 a month from a Ukrainian energy company after your father was named point man on Ukraine.
It is impossible for me to be on any of the boards that I just mentioned without saying that I'm the son of the Vice President of the United States.